Hey everyone, it's Asa, and welcome to my guide on when to pivot. This is a pretty tricky topic because there are a lot of factors, but the main factor is understanding how impactful it is when your units are contested, which is, of course, the main reason to pivot. So for this, I like to look at a rolling calculator. So let's say we're playing a standard 4 cost comp, so we're going to be level 8 and we're looking for 4 cost. Between the 8 players in the game, let's say throughout stage 4, we're going to be rolling about 50 gold. This is not counting gold we're spending on units. So in actuality, this means you will be going level 8. If you're going level 8 with 50 gold, let's say on 4-1, this is kind of the amount of gold you will have rolled if you're spending all of that gold by the end of the stage. Because again, it's not counting gold you're spending on units. So if you're leveling on 4-1 with like 85 gold or something, this might be about the amount of gold you're rolling. But again, we're looking at the entire stage. With 8 players in the game, it's likely that a couple of them will be re-rolling. But we can say an average player may have like four four costs. Maybe the players who are fast 8 will have like 6 of them. Two of them 2-starred, or some mix of a 2-star and some 1-stars. Perhaps like a scrap player with like an Echo pair, Corky 2, Elise, something along these lines. So again, like 4 units on average, so 8 times 4. So let's just say 32. And we can see that by the end of stage 4, we have about a 50% chance of hitting our desired forecast. So let's say we're playing Twitch carry, we're uncontested, no one else is buying any Twitches. We're like 50-50 spending this amount of gold on level 8. Uh, this is seeing 25 shops basically. So 50-50 odds by the end of stage 4, which is pretty reasonable. You're going to get some more gold on neutrals. You're going to get some more gold on 5-1 and throughout the rest of the game. So as the game goes on, let's just say by the end of stage 5, maybe this is like 80 gold or 90 gold. We can see we're pretty likely to hit. However, if we're contested by, let's say, 2 other players, and one of them hits Switch 2, the other one has like just Twitch pair, for example, so we'll say 5 copies out, we can see it drastically decreases our chances of hitting. So our chance of hitting a 2-star Twitch now by the end of the stage, assuming these other players roll before us, obviously that's not always going to be the case. We'll talk about that in a bit. It goes all the way down to 13% from 50%, so a really big jump. Uh, for the number I used at end of stage 5, I believe I used 80, right? Yeah, I used 80. But with 5 copies out, instead of being 83% to hit, you're now only 30%. So basically, in less than 1 out of 3 games, compared to 4 out of 5 games, that's a really, really big difference. Again, this is 3-way contested, and if other players roll before you. If you're rolling at the same time, you can, kind of cut this number because obviously we're not assuming everyone else is finding their units before us every time. So, but even if we say 3 copies are out, it really, really decreases our chance. So again, let's say we're spending 50 gold, our chance of getting 2-star Twitch by the end of stage 4. This is kind of like a reasonable amount, is still pretty low. And of course, it's very, very impactful if you don't have your desired upgrade unit. You're honestly probably just not going to place very well. For rerolls, it's a very similar story. So let's say we're looking at an Urgot reroll, so we're level 6 and we're looking for 2 costs. We can say the average player, let's just say, has 3 or 4 again, 2 costs on their board during stage 3. I think this is pretty reasonable. Some players will have more, but some players will have less. So let's just say like 4, so 32 2 costs out. And let's say we're looking for what's going on here. Why is this blank? Do I have to? Oh, okay, I had to put something in here. So let's say we're trying to spend 100 gold to try to hit a 3-star. We're 30% to spend 100 gold, which is 50 shops. And again, you get natural shops. So throughout the game, you'll get more than 20 natural shops, um, you'll actually spend a lot more gold than this. Throughout an average game, you'll usually get close to about 200 gold on average, depending on how long you live. Obviously, if you're high rolling, you get more than that. It might be a little bit less on average. It depends. It honestly depends on playstyle and how much you like econ augments as well. Um, but your board normally costs like 80, and then you spend like 120. So you can see we're like in 60 shops basically. We're 50% to hit 9 copies of this unit. However, we can see if someone else has 9 copies of this unit, our chances of hitting go all the way down to 5%. So it's really, really low. Um, if we make our gold go a lot higher, so let's say like 180 gold, we're 90% to hit if no one else has any. But now if someone else has 9 copies, now we're only 30%. So we went from being like nearly guaranteed to hit to very, very, very unlikely, less than 1/3 to hit. And of course, if you don't hit, you're probably just dead. Obviously, you're not assuming your opponent who's contesting you hits all their copies before you. So if we pick like a kind of in between number, like 6, we're still 50-50 to just end the game basically without hitting our 3-star, and then we're just not going to be in good shape at that point. Okay, so that all was a lot of math. I think it's like really important to kind of understand just how important it is when you're contested. So basically, I would say for reroll, I would almost never roll contested unless you're just able to be way ahead of the other player. If you're able, for example, if you somehow have like 7 copies while your contester only has 3, in that case you're only looking for 2 more, right? So at that point you can just kind of finish off looking for those last 2 copies. But if you see someone who's committed or got reroll, you know for sure it's very, very unlikely they'll pivot. Most players do not pivot. Um, and you're playing to win the game. And let's just say they have 3 ergots on 3-2, and you have 3 ergots on 3-2, but they're actively rolling for them. I would almost never go for ergot 3 in this situation. Um, so some other factors, someone actually made a really good post in the TFT coaching Discord. Basically, just some other factors here. So number of players who are contesting, we kind of talked about that. Another one is like ability to roll first. Again, just depending on how the game is going, sometimes you might have an augment or just like be in a better spot for whatever reason, and you are able to roll before a contester. This might be like if you're, for example, let's say you're playing Twitch, there's one other player playing Twitch. This is not a unit that anyone else just holds. It doesn't intersect with too many. You will intersect with like at least in the fives with other players. But let's say you have an econ augment and you're high rolling, you're win streaking, and you can roll on 4-1 while other players can't roll on 4-1. That makes it a lot less impactful that you will be when you're contested. However, it still does matter because, of course, 4-1, as I like to remind you guys, is less than halfway through the game. If you're high rolling, you're playing for 25 PvP rounds. 4-1 is 10, so you're less than halfway through the game, and having someone contest you throughout the rest of the game is still relevant, even if you are able to roll before them with your initial roll down. Because your initial 4-1 roll down is actually not the bulk of the gold, the shops that you will see that go into your final board. Uh, how committed other players are. So, for example, um, the, Invern mentioned augments here, but it's not just augments, it's items as well, and it's honestly player playstyle. For most of you guys who aren't in like Challenger, I guess, you're not going to know the playstyle of most of your opponents, but I think from experience, uh, both my experience and probably your own experience, I think most players very rarely pivot. For example, if you see someone holding Zara's on bench with Infinity Edge and Rageblade, it's extremely, extremely likely they'll just commit to Twitch no matter what, right? I'm sure you guys have witnessed this. It's just by far the most common way to play TFT. A lot of people are not like super locked in or like scouting all the time. Availability of other viable comps to pivot to. So this is a really good one to bring up. So for example, I mentioned the example with Rageblade and Infinity Edge. These items are kind of really only good on Twitch. So there's not really any other really good Rageblade users. However, if you see that Twitch is contested by two other players, again, that means if we're spending, I think, 80 gold, 40 shops is a better way to think about it. We went from being 80% to hit a Twitch 2, and it dropped all the way down to like 30%. And that's such a big deal. It's much better to just say, hey, there's no other good users of these items, but you can just sacrifice the Rage Blade, right? It's much better to be down one Rage Blade than the equivalent of more than a prismatic worth of gold, right? You're down one item, and it's not like that item is worthless. You can still play a comp like Rebel. It's not like Rageblade is useless. You can still play something like this, like a scrap board, and again, like your Rageblade is not useless. You could play Emissary, even put this on Corki. It's not going to be the best, but it is there. You can play like an Academy board, um, something like this, and you can get value out of these items. Like they're not completely dead, even if they're suboptimal. It's going to be a lot better than trying to contest three-way Twitch just because you have a Rageblade and Infinity Edge. Let's go ahead and look at what else. Relative strength of these comps in the meta. Uh, as I mentioned in a previous video, this patch is very, very balanced. So it's very good to not play contested comp. Pretty much playing any of the top like 10 comps, uh, not contested is going to be better than contesting, all other things being equal. So there have been a lot of patches in the past. For those of you guys who played last set, for example, Fairy Callista, it would be better to just contest. If you had Callista Best in Slot, double Rageblade, it would be better to just contest this three ways rather than to pivot to any other comp. Um, Jinx would be another option, I guess, but it just depends on the patch. This patch, there's not really any clear super S tier comps, so it's not that good to be contested. But um, for those of you who played Release set 12, you could contest Syndra with six other players, and that would just be correct. Fast 8 Anniversary Roll, we kind of already talked about this. I think you almost should never contest 2-cost reroll. Um, Occasionally, one cost reroll, such as when Violet was really strong before she received her nerf, could be contested. But other than that, one cost, no reroll comps have really been justified to be that strong enough to be contested. Nocturne with plus range, you can go just Nocturne 2 and just tempo off of it. Um, yeah. Invert mentions an interesting thing, Prisoner's Dilemma, where you take something committal and you force contesters to pivot. I'm not sure like how if this varies by server, but in my experience across like most elo brackets and NA, just from my own personal playing all the way up in Challenger, as well as coaching players in lower elo, if players have a spot for it, let's say just say someone has like a Camille 2 with someone has a Camille 2 with like a Hodge, Titans, or just like something like this, even if you take an ambusher augment, they tend to just commit. Same thing, like someone has Zeri, Rageblade, Infinity Edge. Like again, these are kind of best in slot items on Twitch as well. But if someone just kind of has this board with Watchers, even with non-committal augments, people tend to just commit to rerolling, especially if they've already rolled a little bit on level 6. It's pretty rare to expect other players to pivot, um, but it's just based on your own experience, honestly, in your elo bracket. I don't have a ton of experience in other brackets, but in high elo and NA, I generally don't expect other players to pivot. So I personally prefer non-committal augments, but um, yes. Committal augments is another really big factor. So I think if you have a committal augment, if it's a gold augment, I guess there aren't really any silver ones, gold or prismatic augments, I would tend to just commit to the comp. In that case, even if it's two-way contested, I would still try to find a way to use it, especially if it's a really high tier comp. Something like Sorcerer +1. Even if there's like two other players with Sorcerer +1, I would still try to play Vertical Sorcerer from this spot. And it also depends how good the comp is. If I have something like Academy +1 and there's two other players with Academy +1, I'm willing to keep playing it. Same with like Rebel. It also depends how much you can splash this. For example, if I have Black Rose +1 and there's two other players with Black Rose +1, I might try to play a completely different board. Although the normal Black Rose board uses Dominator Silco, I might just try to play, maybe like a Twitch board and just play like an extra like Garen, Vladimir, and get three Black Rose in this way, something like this. Just experiment, bruiser. How many units is this? This is 7 units. So then like maybe like a Vi or something. So I might just try to play something like this with Black Rose +1 instead of going for the Soko, which is the main line. Anything else I miss? Yeah, I think those are kind of the. This is a pretty in-depth video, pretty long video, 17 minutes already. So, um, that's pretty much everything I can think of in terms of when to pivot. Generally, you really want to scout early and try to choose a line by 3-1 that is going to be as little contested as possible. With level 8 comps, it's okay to be contested by one other player, but it's much better to not be contested at all. Another thing I didn't mention yet to keep in mind is sometimes other players who are not playing your comp will be taking your unit. So let's just say, for example, you're debating between playing like Rebel. Um, let's say you're thinking about playing Rebel, but two people have Academy +1. Well, they're gonna buy every single Alawi they see. If someone has Sorcerer +1, they're gonna buy every single Zoe they see. So even if you're not directly contested online, you have to make sure that your key units are not too contested as well. That's gonna wrap it up for this video on when to pivot. I know this is a really long one, so if you have any questions, let me know in the Discord, and thanks for watching.